Hey, hello and good evening, everyone. Today I'm speaking to Fereshteh Sadeghi. She's all the way from Tehran, so we have somebody on the ground to talk about the protests and the events of the last week. So first of all, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
So, Fereshteh, I want to understand. You're a journalist that is based in Tehran, is that correct? Or you used to work as a journalist?
Yes, you can say an ex-journalist. It's better to say that because nowadays I don't do any journalism. I mean activities. You can call me a social media activist, or you can say even an Iranian citizen, an observer. Simply an observer. That's the best. That's the best word that you can call me.
Okay, so but you obviously have a very good interest in the country, and I've read some of your stuff that you were
Thank you.
involved in some of the debates. So I just want to start here. We've been hearing in the Western side about this new protest regarding Mahsa Amini, and the first question I have is regarding Mahsa Amini is how did she die? Because that seems to be open for that seems to be controversial at this stage.
Okay, the first days, on the first days that she died, there were conflicting reports about how she was died. And because, police in Iran, sometimes they don't treat, for example, even when they arrest someone who is a shoplifter, they don't treat them quite well. Okay.
Right.
So there have been reports of violence by police against criminals anyway. So most of the time when something like this happens, people, they first point the finger of blame at the police forces. It was the same thing, the morality police, and sometimes you can say they have I mean, you can say violent, but they are not treating people properly. Let's put it in that way. Anyway, when she died, and police announced that, and she was in coma. First, she was in coma. There was an encounter, and then a female journalist reported that a girl, she was arrested by the morality police, or what we call it, Gasht, and then she was in a coma. 2 or 3 days passed, and then she died. By the time that she died, she was arrested on Tuesday, and on Friday afternoon, she died. And by the time that she died, protests started right after the news of her death. So some people got onto the street before the hospital where she had died, and they started protesting about that. And they point a finger of blame at the police force. I mean, the Geshtesha, the morality police, and they say that they definitely had done something to her, that she died. And unfortunately, her family didn't help a lot. They At first they denied that their daughter had any underlying issues or underlying health issues, but later, little by little, it was revealed that she had some sort of underlying health issues. She had had a brain surgery before when she was 8. She constantly met various physicians. So by the time that all these information were released, everybody had believed that police had hit her, had beaten her up, and then I think the right thing that the police did was that they released a video when she entered the police center. Everybody could see that she was fine. She was walking. She didn't show any sign that she had, for example, she had been beaten. Show it, for example, to the female officer, whatever. But I think the damage was done, and somehow people believe that. She died in the police custody under some sort of violence. That was the whole story. And the fact that I think security forces asked her parents to bury her soon, very soon. I mean, the day that she died, tomorrow, the day after that, she had been buried. It again raised suspicions. That was the whole story.
Right, but isn't that practice in Islamic cultures to bury as quickly as possible?
Yeah, it is. It is actually, but sometimes you try to gather some people to start a sort of propaganda for it. And the security forces in Iran, they've learned it. Whenever something like this happens, they usually ask the victim's family to bury them as soon as possible, not allowing many people gather, turning it into a new rally or something like that.
Okay, so this is not the first time that the security forces is faced with something of the sort.
Mm, no, no, there had been some. I mean, in the before, for example, there was a sort of opposition figure, I mean, domestic opposition figure from Sahabi family. And when the father died, his daughter, she also had some sort of heart, we can say heart problems. And then in when it was the father's burial, some sort of encounters and struggles happened, and she suddenly had a what can we say, heart attack. And then after that, I think again they ordered the family to bury her very quickly. So it is something, as you can say, it's a norm, it's a trend that it happens quite.
Okay.
If somebody dies, it happens.
So the government released a report that I
Mhm.
could only find in a Lebanese newspaper because the Western media just didn't mention it. That sort of confirms what you've been saying, that there's a known history of having heart attacks and heart issues. I guess a lot of
Brain
people with
issues, excuse me.
brain issues,
Mahsa had brain issues. She had
brain issues.
brain
Okay,
surgery. Yeah.
okay, and then the question would become, because I see a lot of even Iranians have been critical against the government. They say, but the government's just making it up. I mean, is that what do you make of that argument?
I'm not a physician, so I can't decide about. I mean,
Right.
I can't judge about the medical records and these kind of things. But it seems that even today, I saw on an Iranian news website that the lawyer of Amini's family had accepted that the record which the government has released about the girls, I mean, going and visiting doctor, they are all correct. And then in the past few months, and even today, I saw a new document. It had been released by the Interior Ministry. It was a letter Mahsa's father had, who was insisting that his daughter didn't have any underlying health issues. He had written that letter. I think it was quite some years ago, a few years ago, and he had asked. It seems that he had been transported. I mean, he had been moved from his own city to Tabriz. And he had asked them, because I have a daughter who has underlying health issues and she needs family protection, and she all the time she needs visiting doctor, please return me to my home city, to the city of Saqqez. And the organization, I think it was social welfare, because it seems that her father worked for social welfare organization. They had accepted his request, and they had asked his bosses to return him to his home city. So it means that the family knew about it. I don't justify what police did. Maybe it was too much for arresting her. It didn't. Maybe if they accepted her argument that, okay, I go home, I change my, for example, uniform, none of these things would happen. Nobody justifies the police. But the point is that she had this record, this medical record. So, and the medical forensic of Iran, I think in the report, 19 physicians have signed this report that she was not beaten up. No
Right.
violence was used against her. So you can say police was maybe the only mistake that police did, and it was unlucky, was that arresting her. It was her arrest. That was that.
Okay. Okay. That's fair enough. So I want to sort of get into the consequence of her death, because obviously it cannot be seen in isolation. The first one is, can you maybe explain to us and those who are not, have never been to Iran, what is the story about the hijab, and maybe just explain also to maybe a South African audience what the difference is between a hijab and a chador, because I had to learn that after I got married.
Okay. You know, hijab is something that we have it in Holy Quran, and we should accept that. Not we should accept that. The constitution of Iran is based on the Sharia law. But hijab was one of the laws that it was enforced in the Iranian society few years, not right after, few years after the Iranian Revolution. It was enforced, and the law was passed by a council which is called High Council of Cultural Revolution. In 1980s, it was after the revolution. Iran was involved in a war. There was a sort of a spiritual atmosphere in this country. that help the rulers to enforce hijab. And Iranians, because they are Muslims, as a Muslim woman, many women may not accept it. I don't want to challenge them, or I don't want to say what is their argument, but I just want to say that some women don't accept it. But generally, as a Muslim woman, you should wear hijab. And the hijab that we are talking about is something like me, covering your hair, covering somehow your hands, your feet. So it was enforced in the society, and but the society changes. I mean, it's a live society, it's a thriving society. Some women don't want to accept it. Some women are young women, they want to show themselves. They don't accept, I mean, hijab rule. So you can't force them to say you have to wear it because I want it. No, I'm nobody to force anybody to do that. So it was, so you can say hijab is part and parcel of the Iranian society. You can't deny it. Nobody can deny it. But the point is that the argument that now exists, and it has been existing for some years, is that does the Islamic government has the right to enforce it on all women? But when we talk about hijab, this is the normal hijab that you can have it on the street. Many women don't observe this sort of hijab that I am, for example, wearing right now. Some women, they may even wear chador, which is something black. Some women may wear this scarf very loosely, that they need to adjust it. Even before this protest, if you have visited Iran in the past couple of years, you can see many women, they don't wear this scarf. It means that you can see their hair. So we don't say it is something that it is enforced and everybody is observing this rule, because no, it is not. So the point about, I think one of the mistakes that the Western media make about Iran is that some people think that the government is forcing people to do it. And if, for example, I don't do that, they take me to prison. No, it is a law. Yeah, it is a law, but it is not practiced in the society necessarily. Some people do that because they are observing Muslims. Some of them, for example, they want to go into state organizations, into a ministry, they have to have it. But you may see many women, they are driving their cars and they're not wearing their scarf. This is the point, that Western media and Western people in Western societies usually don't know that. They don't know that.
And I just want to confirm that when I was in Iran last year, it was my first time in the country. To me, it was a function of geography. If I go to Qom or I go to Isfahan is a bit of a mix, but it's still a more conservative city. Qom, I don't think I could even find a hijab. It was a full chador everywhere. But if you go, for example, to the Caspian Sea, you go to Rasht, one of those places, Ansara, sometimes I even found women without it. They were rare, but most of them were wearing it. But it was, you really had to look for the piece of cloth. So just to confirm what you've been saying.
Yeah, and I remember about 3 weeks ago, I was in Rasht. And then it was in the afternoon, we went to a restaurant, and in the restaurant, nobody had a scarf on her head. Maybe sometimes they have it on their shoulders because they said that, for example, if morality police, if we see somebody, we wear it. But they didn't wear it even. So I want to say that this is the mistakes that the Western societies, Western media, and Western journalists make about Iran. And they think that, no, it is a very strict society. No, it is not like that.
Okay, that's fair. I want to get into, let's say, the morality police. When were they founded? Because my understanding is they were not there since the Islamic Revolution started. They actually started in the 90s.
Morality police, yes.
Yeah.
I think morality police started the law about, hijab enforcement laws were in place. But the morality police, I think it was under the term of President Mohammad Khatami that they were ratified. And the duty to guide women who don't observe, who don't practice hijab, was given to the Interior Ministry that was responsible for the police force. So through the years, it seems that 2 or 3 times these laws have changed. And at the end, to some extent, at first, police forces, they disagreed with this duty. They rejected this duty. They said that we are police force. We are not people to go. We are not in a position to guide people for Islamic, for example, Islamic rules. But at the end of the day, it was given to them, and it was their responsibility was given to them to guide people. So they were told to arrest the women who don't wear properly. And then in recent months, it seems that they had somehow had changed their duty from simply just fining women or arresting them and then asking their families to bring uniform, and they change it, and then they sign, they give a signature that they won't do that again. They said that we have created centers that we take women, the women that we arrested, the girls that we arrest them, we take them there. This is the same center that Mahsa was taken. Then there is a lady, she explains about the hijab, why is it important, what is the reason behind it. It was something like that. We have the same thing. You may not believe, I think, but your audience may find it interesting that we have the same thing for what can I say, for traffic accidents and these kind of things. For example, I park my car somewhere that it's not allowed to park. Then they take my car to a parking, and when I go to take out my car, I have to pay some money. Then there are some classes that I have to attend, and they review the traffic rules for me as a kind of, I can say, a motorist who broke the law. So this is the same thing for hijab, and the center that Mahsa went was one of those centers for guiding hijab. So we can say the rule, this Gasht Ershad, or this morality police, started in late 1990s, and it has continued since then. But the point is that last night I was asking, excuse me, if you have any question, please interrupt me.
No, you can talk.
Okay,
It's
okay.
great. It's great if somebody talks.
Last night I was speaking with, I was chatting with a friend. He's in Abadan. And Abadan, about 3 months ago, was the scene of protest for the collapse of 2 buildings. Then I asked him, were there many protests there? He said, no. And I said, why? He said that number one, the reason is that there are people here in this city. It is a southern city. He said, adjacent to Iraq. He said, because people here don't know what Gasht Ershad or morality police is. They don't have it, simply. So you can see these police force are usually mostly for cities like Tehran, maybe Shiraz. I didn't see Shiraz because I didn't see in Shiraz because in April I was in Shiraz. But definitely there is in Shiraz, in Isfahan, maybe in Mashhad, in Qom, but for example, not in Abadan, which is a smaller city. So he said people don't know what Gasht Ershad is.
So is this law even, I mean, the way you describe it, it doesn't sound like this law was workable from the beginning. I mean, now I want to ask you, in 2018, the Iranian government, they looked into this issue and they had a survey, and they found that many women, 60-70%, I think it was, they don't always follow these laws. You know, sometimes they are a bit relaxed about it. So does this mean that there was at least some internal debate in Iran about it, you know, before this protest?
Definitely there had been, and these protests were I can't say a turning point, but Mahsa's death was a trigger point. Okay, but these discussions about hijab, about women who don't wear it, women who don't practice it, women who wear it loosely, it has been in the Iranian society for quite some time. So they were not new. About 2 months ago, 2 girls, they started quarreling with each other on a public bus. One of them didn't wear it and didn't wear anything. And the other one, she was wearing a chador. And she was saying to her that, adjust your hijab. And she said, that's none of your business. And then they started attacking each other. And then the girl who was not wearing it, she said that I'm taking your film and send it to, you know, this lady who is in the US. I prefer not to name her.
It's the one who took a selfie with Mike Pompeo.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, yes.
So she said that I will send that this video to her, and you know, the Islamic Republic. Let me be honest with you. It's very sensitive about that lady because she had started, she was the one who kicked off the campaign against hijab about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And she said that take your take your cell phones and film yourself or other women who are not wearing it. She encouraged it as an act of civil disobedience. And some women, they don't like to wear it. Nobody can do anything about it. So these discussions about hijab had been in the Iranian society for some while, for some time. And then Mahsa Amini's death was the trigger point that started these protests. Though I guess protesters didn't reach any of the, demands. The morality police nowadays, it is keeping a low profile, but who knows, maybe in
Okay.
six months from now, they return to the streets.
But is the government open to changing these laws? I understand Raisi is a bit of a conservative person.
Um, you know, the point about hijab is not in the hand of governments. So we say, for example, in the hand of President Raisi or in the hand of President Rouhani or in the hands of President Ahmadinejad, who openly, many times, he said that I oppose the presence of this morality police, not in the hands of President Raisi, not Rouhani. It is something that the system, the Islamic Republic as a system, I prefer not to use the word regime. People here don't like it. The Islamic Republic insists on keeping it. So it is out of the control of the government, though the Interior Ministry sometimes manages these police forces, but it's out of their control. So it is something that the Islamic Republic wants it to be in place. And as long as the Islamic Republic, when we are talking about the Islamic Republic, we are talking about the whole system, the whole decision makers in the bigger picture. As long as they haven't decided to remove it, no one can do anything.
Okay, so that's part of the controversy. So I want to sort of ask another question here, which is these protests took place just after the nuclear deal was announced that it was going to fail. I mean, I'm not sure if it's failed, but it seems to be not succeeding. And we know in America there's midterm elections, and if the Republicans win this, it's probably not going to continue. And it got a lot of people that are generally critical of these type of revolutions very skeptical and ask, does it have anything to do with the failure of the nuclear deal?
You know, maybe the force behind, not the force, the main protesters in this round of protests were women. And actually not every woman, the women who oppose hijab, because, for example, I didn't attend this protest because it is not my problem, to be honest. So we can say this protest somehow has some sort of other reasons behind. It is not simply because of this piece of cloth that I wear or somebody else doesn't wear. So there are a sort of desperation about not nuclear talks, but about the problem that the Iranian society seems to got stuck in, and it is the sanctions. That these sanctions have repercussions. They make people weaker. They make people poorer, especially the middle class people. And this middle class are feeling that they usually try to improve, to promote to the higher classes. But it seems that the effect of these sanctions have been to drag them down towards the weaker, working class, toward the poor. So many of these women who are protesting are from these classes, middle classes. So I don't know if the nuclear deal reaches a conclusion. It would alleviate their grievances, but at least it brings some sort of economic relief. And when there is a sort of economic relief, people feel better. And when they feel better, they may not think about this, for example, hijab. Okay, they go to North, they go to Kish Island in the car. They don't look at it as the problem of all their miseries. But nowadays they feel that, okay, this is the reason behind our miseries. If we remove it, then everything will be fine. No. So I think these nuclear talks, if they reach an agreement, and Iran and the P4+1, the US, if they reach an agreement, it brings some sort of economic relief, which, by the way, would reduce the pressure, especially on the middle class. Maybe from that aspect, we can talk about it. We can say it may have an effect.
And what have this, like, I mean, maybe we should just go into detail, like what effect has the sanctions had on Iran, and I guess we can say women in particular?
Sanctions, they make the flow of money to Iran difficult. And as I told you, the main effect, it negatively affects the ruling, not the ruling class, not the rich, but the middle class and the poor. They make poor and the middle class poorer. So the women that mostly they are protesting, some of them are from the same middle class. So sanctions prevents investment, foreign investment. So you can't create jobs. When there aren't jobs, then women won't go to work. So they may need money. Then sometimes at home, they may have some problems with husband, with family, with father, at the university. It makes life a bit difficult. It makes life a bit harsh. Though I think the government has really tried, not the government, not, for example, Raisi government alone, even the Rouhani governments alone, the other governments consecutively, they have tried to alleviate these pains, but they have their effects. You can't say no, they don't, because they have. And then they prevent, for example, I myself, I want to buy something from Amazon. I can't do that because I don't have access to international banking. Then to Visa card, to MasterCard. Then people want to have a relation with the world. They want to do investment in, not investment. They want to, for example, especially the youngsters, they want to work maybe with foreigners to find a job, to find experience, but it does not. And then when the system makes everything, looks at everything through security lenses, they have the right that they say that there is an economic war against us, an economic war. We are in the middle of an economic war. People should cooperate with us, but sometimes people can't cooperate. Simple as that. Sometimes people don't want to cooperate. Sometimes people are tired of cooperating. I mean, constantly cooperating and not seeing the effects of that cooperation. Because when you cooperate with the government or with the system, you also expect the system to cooperate with you, to listen to you. And then when you feel that, no, they are blind, they are deaf to your demands, then suddenly there is an eruption of anger, something like that.
Okay, so you can also say the sanctions have definitely contributed to the conditions that caused this protest.
To economic conditions of the country. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have an idea of the type of person that is protesting at the moment, like in terms of class? I mean, it's obviously women leading it, but is it wide throughout the country, or is it only in certain sectors?
No, it was number one. It was not wide throughout the country. Unlike what you have seen on social media, it was not throughout the country. They were mainly in Tehran. And because Tehran is the center of the working class, the middle class of Iran. So they were mainly in Tehran. And then, for example, in Rasht, yes, in certain big cities, but not much in smaller cities. Or the cities or the areas, and in other cities, for example, Shiraz. In Shiraz, it was in Ma'aliabad of Shiraz. Ma'aliabad is a very posh street. So it means that the people who were protesting there, they were from middle class or upper middle class, young girls. And then it was in Rasht. I told you I was in Rasht too. It was on a street. It started on a street that is called Gulsar. Gulsar is a very posh region, posh area. When you see, oh wow, how chic it is. Really, it is very chic. In Isfahan, in Mashhad, it was in Ahmadabad Boulevard, which is the north of Mashhad, the upper middle class living. So you can say these protests were somehow mainly attended with women, but by women, but not necessarily all women, with women from middle class and higher middle class, but not from women from the weaker classes or working classes. Because I always think that women in working class of Iran, they have other grievances. Wearing hijab or not wearing hijab is not their main problem, because they are dealing with discrimination. They have social security problems. Some of them are breadwinners. When someone is breadwinner, she doesn't think about hijab. She's thinking about bread, because she has to bring something to the table. So, and students this time around, students were involved in some university, mostly in campuses, but in universities. But again, for example, in universities that they exist in Tehran, the universities that they are located in Tehran, but not, for example, a university that is in Qom, or maybe in, no, in the cities that they had, for example, in Mashhad, there was only one university, Ferdowsi, but there are other universities in Mashhad too. So you can say students, women from the middle class and higher middle class. And I think one of the reasons that their movement will lead to nowhere is the same reason, because the poor didn't join them.
So I guess on that point, what threat is this movement then to the regime's stability? Because again, and according to our media, the Iranian government is about to fall, you know.
No, it is not going to fall. You know, let me tell you something. I think the Iranian system is too big to fall, number one. Number two, the the Islamic Republic system, the Islamic Republic has many sources, has many money, has supporters. If you see people haven't gone to streets, it means that they have their own support. Maybe their support has reduced for decades, but it happens everywhere. But the Islamic Republic is not on the verge of collapse. It won't collapse easily. And a system, for example, at the time of 1979 revolution, Shah fell down when army and armed forces, they said that we are neutral in this fight between the Shah and the opposition. But here, no, the armed forces, which includes the army or Artesh, the IRGC, all of them, they are supporting the system. So as long as the system has the armed forces, has money, has support, it doesn't fall. What was your question?
No, it's that question if this is really a threat to the regime, because again,
no, it is not. It is not a threat to the existence of regime, but it can erode. It can erode the patience. So you know, these protests, I think they have now lasted for about 4 weeks, something about 4 weeks. Then yesterday I was watching actually it was a state TV. A reporter had gone to the Bazar region and was asking what happened the day that there were protests in the Bazar area. And they were saying that, look, we usually close the shops and switch off the lamps at 9 or at 8. But today we had to close the shop at 2. So from 2 to 8, 6 hours, they lost revenue. So little by little, if protests continue, then people get tired. They say, oh, enough, finish. But at the same time, this protest and this anger, even if it finishes, it goes deep into what I can say, something like an ashes. It is a burning fire, but under ashes. And then with the next round of protest about something else, again, it erupts. But if you know, if they are a threat to the existence of the Islamic Republic, no, not at all.
That's interesting, because that's not what the French media is telling me. So you know, it's
so we can wait for until next month, and we'll see if the Islamic Republic collapsed or not.
No, fair enough.
Time will tell us.
No, I also, I'm very skeptical about what our media tells us these days. I want to ask you another question about the violence, first from the protesters and then from the government. There's accusations that the MEK and the Kurd separatists and the Baluch separatists are involved in some of these protests. Is this even true, or is this just the the regime making up stories.
Propaganda.
Propaganda. Yeah.
You know, there are some opposition groups to the Islamic Republic then that when they see the ground is prepared, they get active. So this is the same story of Baluch separatists, or actually about Baluch separatists, we just had I think it was 10 days ago, a Friday, that they said that they attacked, they distributed weapons, but there were some other rumors in that case, and what happened in Zahedan not clear yet. But let me tell you, there was no protest about hijab in Sistan Baluchistan region and in Zahedan. No, nothing, because it's a very traditional, community about hijab and these kind of things. So there were no protests. But when you feel that the ground is ready, and then there were some rumors about a rape story, something like that. Some people say that the story in Zahedan and the attack started from that point, not necessarily because of this. But there are some Baluch separatists, but they are not very powerful. About Kurds, the story is a little bit different, because I remember when do you remember that Kurdistan referendum, which they voted in Iraq for their separation? Back then in Iran, there were jubilation about Kurds, about this one. And then at that time, the situation became somehow a sort of security situation because Iran was worried about that. So you can say that separatism exists. But is it powerful to do anything? I don't think so. But are they powerful to create havoc, to wreak havoc, to kill people and then blaming the security forces? Yes, they are. They have these capabilities. And after the events in Kurdistan, we saw that the IRGC started attacking some Kurdish groups that they are outlawed by Iran, and they exist in the Kurdistan. They shelters are in in Iraq's Kurdistan region. But about other groups, there aren't much groups that they can topple, for example, the Islamic Republic through these activities, but they can kill people. And something else, the Islamic Republic, what it has learned, because we have had since 2009 elections and the riots after that, we have had some, we can say 12 years of protest, various protests. This time around, the Islamic Republic learned its lesson. And the lesson was that not using lethal force. So they used paintballs, they used shotguns, these kind of weapons that they don't kill people. So as the result, you can see the number of deaths among the protesters is not very high. You don't see much, you don't hear much about the deaths, but there are among the security forces.
Okay, because I mean, again, like there has been videos circulating of protesters being killed by assuming the police. I mean,
police. That's the point. That's the point. Police force say we didn't use lethal force. We are using paintballs this time around. We are using tear gas, water cannons, batons, but not live rounds. So they blame for example, these kind of groups that they create. They wreak havoc. They say that they use, because especially they say that the bullets calibers that are used to kill certain people or some of these protesters, they are not the calibers that we use among the armed forces. This is the argument of this side. The other side, yes, the other side always say they are killing. But we have some people among the security forces and among these Basiji volunteer forces, they've been killed. They've been killed by weapons. So it means that if they've been killed by weapons, it means that somebody has killed them. Security forces don't kill a besiege force.
And where would the protesters get the weapons? I mean,
there are weapons in Iran. you don't believe it? Yeah, there are weapons.
No, but
there are weapons, and some of them have been stabbed by death. But there are weapons. Sometimes we have, for example, armed robberies. Where do these robbers get these arms from? Smuggling. You can find them easily in the Iranian society, though it is banned.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to ask on the Kurds as well, because this is a point that I think the Western media definitely gets wrong. What is the attitude of the Kurds towards Iran? Because there's been an attempt by America in particular to trump up the claim of Kurdish nationalism? I mean, is that even the case among the Iranian Kurds? Because just would say, when I was there, I found mixed views among the Kurds. You know?
Yeah, Kurds, we can call them one of the main ethnicities that forms the Iranian society. They are really Iranian from the not Fars race or Persian race. They have their own race and ethnicities, but they are one of the pillars that they created this country. And when it comes to Kurds, we have two western provinces that both of them are adjacent to Iraq, and they are Kurds. One of them is Kermanshah. The other one is Kurdistan. In Kermanshah, Kurds are all Shia. So it means that apart from being Kurd, part and parcel of the Iranian society, they are Shia. And this Shiism, it again connects them to the rest of the Iranian society. In Kurdistan region of Iran, and let me tell you something, Kurds in Iraq, in Turkey, and in Syria, they are all originated from Iran's Kurdistan, especially Iraq's Kurdistan. It was separated from Iran during, I think, Safavid era, something like that, about 400 years ago, 300 years ago. So they were originally part of Iranian soil. So Kurds see themselves as Iranians. There is no doubt about it. So as you say, they may have mixed feelings. Sometimes they feel that they have to form a new country with other Kurds from other, for example, in Iraq. But at the same time, I think if we look at them, maybe the majority, I can't say majority, I can't say a number, but a good number of them, they prefer to be part of Iran as a whole, because they are Iranians. They are originally Iranians. They are not from Iraq's Kurdistan. They are not from Turkey's Kurdistan. They are from Iran. They are originally Iranian. This is an important point.
Okay, that's fair. I guess I want to ask sort of the last question here as we come into a closing. There's been a lot of demonization of Iranian society in Western media. I think a lot of it is unfounded, but there's also been, I suppose, valid critique, you can say, against Iran. And how would one move to bring better relationship between Iran, America, and Israel, and all these countries?
About Israel, the point about Iran and Israel is something ideological. Because Iran opposes the occupation of Palestinian territories, it doesn't recognize Israel for that reason. So that animosity returns to that point. And as long as Israel is looked as an occupying force, that relation, there won't be any rapprochement. With the US, things are different, because US has been in Iran was in Iran even after the revolution. If you have heard, in 1979, after the revolution, the new Islamic Republic, they closed the Israeli embassy because they said that we support the Palestinian cause. And they gave the embassy building to Palestinians when Yasser Arafat traveled to Iran to meet with Imam Khomeini. But the US embassy was still working until late 1979. So rapprochement with the West, definitely with the US, is possible, but Iranians say the US should stop its hostility towards Iran, and the US says Iran should stop its what it calls exporting terrorism, supporting, for example, terrorist groups in their region. So there is a sort of animosity between them. None of them backs up from their stance. Because, for example, imagine Iran backs up from that cause for Palestinian. Iran, the Islamic Republic, it will lose the credibility. Some part of its credibility is because it is supporting the Palestinian cause as oppressed people. So I think for the time being, I don't see any light in the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, for rapprochement between Iran and the US. They have just tried to sometimes reduce tensions. This is the best that they can do among themselves. But for example, opening the US embassy, No, not. I don't see any prosperity for it, any prospect for it at the. I mean, for a few next years. I don't see. Maybe something happens in the future.
I mean that is also because I would assume the Iranian. I mean, it's both the Iranian and the U.S. government are too strong in their convictions, maybe in this regard.
Somehow, yes, they say that. And then there are many grievances in the Iranian society against the US. I mean, over the past 40 years, sanctions, various sorts of animosity. And even then, these grievances, they return to 1953 coup. So yes, Madeleine, I think it was Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State. Yeah. She apologized for the coup, but what's the use of that, you know? So if you apologize, it won't correct the history. It's just apologizing, something, I mean, I think useless. But so the Iranian society has many grievances, especially, for example, during 8 years war with Iraq. It was imposed by Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, and the US supported Saddam in that war. Without US support, Saddam couldn't continue this war for 8 years. So, you know, there are some legitimate grievances. When it comes from the US, it is usually speaking on behalf of its allies rather than itself. Nothing has happened on Iranian society, on American society, as far as I know, maybe I'm mistaken, that it had affected the American people a lot. Maybe you can say, for example, some bombings and these kind of things, terrorist attacks, rather than it didn't happen. But Iran was involved in 8 years war, that it was fully supported by US. So I think if someone has to back down from its stance, it should be the US government, not Iran. Okay. But if they back down, then they would open the window for more rapprochement.
Okay, but I mean the sanctions was an attempt, I assume, by Barack Obama to try and do that, to try and bring some better relations. I mean those would be, I suppose, steps in the right direction.
Yes, but it didn't work. You know that. Trump came and he just withdrew from the deal, and then everything got in the air, and then nothing happened. You know, then it just increased people's optimism, and at the same time gave the rulers of the Islamic Republic some sort of justification. Look, we tried; they didn't want it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I just want to give you like one last word. Like, is there some message you would like to just get to the audience out, maybe from Iran, so that we can?
Okay. You read the messages?
No, I say I would ask if you have a message for the audience or anything of the sort that you would like to say.
Oh, if I have. The only message that I have for the Western, audience of you is that please don't look at Iran through the window, which is media, especially on Twitter, because maybe 1 or 2% of the Iranian society is on Twitter, active on Twitter. So when you see something, please don't believe that it is, oh, this is Iran. Even if you want to know about Iran, please ask some other people, not necessarily the Iranian diaspora, because the Iranian diaspora sometimes don't tell the truth about Iran. Just try to do some search, do some video, watch some videos on YouTube or something like that. So don't accept the media propaganda or the Twitter propaganda alone. Just do some search about Iran, because Iran is not something that the media, Western media, have portrayed as it is. No, it is not.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.